Welcome to the 76 Capital Leadership Series. My name is Wayne Kimmel, and I'm your host. We are here today with part 2 of the Scott Pioli interview. Scott is a 26-year NFL executive. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champ, 5-time NFL Executive of the Year, and is now with the NFL Network and CBS Sports as a front office analyst. He is also importantly known as an advocate, an ally for equality, social justice, and social responsibility. In part 1 of the interview with Scott, we talked about his childhood, playing football in college, coaching in college, meeting Bill Belichick, how he actually met the great Bill Belichick, and then how he went on and started working with him at the Cleveland Browns. In this part 2, we talk about the drafting of Tom Brady, the fact that they went on and won 3 Super Bowls at the New England Patriots, the trading for Randy Moss, how Scott is such a true ally for social justice and equality and truly breaking down all of the barriers for women and minorities. It's something that he's very passionate about. So thanks for joining us. Enjoy part 2 of my interview with Scott Pioli. Wow. So you were there for a year and then went to the New York Jets. How did you get there?
Yeah. So what happened was, one of my great trivia questions is I asked people who was the only person to ever be the head coach of the New York Jets twice, but never coach a game. So after the 96 season, after the Super Bowl, which was in 97, the Patriots lost to the Green Bay Packers. And that was when the divorce between Bill Parcells and the entire staff of New England Patriots happened. And the Jets hired Bill Belichick to be the head coach, which lasted for about, an 8-day negotiation while the Krafts and Mr. Hess, Leon Hess, who was the owner of the Jets at the time, were negotiating how they were going to get Parcells out of his contract and let him become the Jets. So Belichick's the head coach. So the day that happens, Bill gets on the phone and calls Ozzie and says, "Hey, listen, Ozzie, I'm the head coach of the Jets. I want to bring Scott up there." And I'll never forget, Ozzie came into my office and he says, "Hey, listen, Scott, your boy called and he goes, I think you need to take this job." So I went up to the Jets to be the director of pro personnel. And then 8 days later, Belichick is no longer the head coach of the New York Jets. And I forget how many days it was. I want to say it was 7 or 8. And then Bill Parcells is the head coach. So that was 1997. And it was incredible, again, to be a part of this organization. And where we, a year later, we're 12-4 and playing in the AFC Championship game in 1998 with Vinny Testaverde at the quarterback. It was pretty amazing.
He made some really interesting moves to get the team going there. I mean, it's incredible. We're here with Scott Pioli on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, telling his full story of all the things that he's done in his career. Now he's the NFL Network front office analyst, CBS Sports front office analyst as well, and talking about his whole 26-year career in the NFL. And after being with the Jets and Bill Parcells as the head coach there. I know that a lot of people who are watching right now are excited to hear, some of the stories of, in 2000, going up to New England and becoming initially the assistant director of player personnel there. And my God, you and Bill Belichick had an incredible run together.
Yeah, it was, I'm very fortunate because, so again, thinking about the end of the Jets, Bill became the head coach of the Jets for a day at the end of the Parcells era after 99, and then he went up to New England. And then, so Bill and I, again, we ended up going up to New England together. And at the time, there was a general manager in place. That was in the winter of 2000, Bobby Greer. And then, but I think everyone kind of knew that there was change was going to happen. And fortunately, I was able to, Bill and I had this plan and this hope and this desire that someday we would start this franchise together, whatever franchise it was, and I was going to be in charge of the personnel and the cap and the contracts and be the front for that. But it would be this incredible collaboration, and that happened in 2000. And Yeah, it was 9 seasons in New England. You know, Bill and I worked together for 17 years, and it has been a very blessed football life, that's for sure.
I mean, so you go in there with Bill, you have, what it seemed like at the time, a franchise quarterback in Drew Bledsoe. And then you were also, I believe, were part of the draft that drafted Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
In the 6th round, and you had Drew out there, and then he gets that terrible hit, and then you have this opportunity, right, in life where Tom Brady just stepped in, and that was the beginning of really truly history in the NFL.
Yeah, and when we get up there, you're right. We had this a franchise quarterback in Drew Bledsoe, a player that Bill had been with for the one season he was with the Patriots, the '96 season, as the defensive coordinator. And you go up there, you've got a quarterback in place, and one of the things you need in this league to win is a quarterback. And yet Drew was a veteran quarterback. And you always have to be thinking about not just the now, right? There's this duality. You think about the now and the future. And, Tom Brady, we drafted, my Bill had just gotten there months before. We drafted Brady in April of 2000 and developed him, and he developed himself. And he worked himself up the ladder, in terms of the depth chart. And part of what was fascinating, that year, we were the only team in the NFL that kept 4 quarterbacks on our active roster. And for all that we didn't know, because if we knew if we knew anything, we were that smart, we wouldn't have waited to draft the guy until the 6th round. So anyone else who tells a different story about where they had him rated or how wonderful they thought Tom was, they're all lying. And we tell the truth about what happened. We liked the player, but we had no idea he was going to be that. But from the moment that he walked in that building, we knew that we had something. We weren't sure, and we had someone we wanted to develop. And his work ethic, his work habits, his leadership ability, his ability to authentically and genuinely be a leader amongst all communities within the locker room was really pretty rare and special. And again, we kept him on as our 4th quarterback throughout that 2000 season. Most teams only keep 2 quarterbacks on their roster. A couple teams would keep 3. But we thought that we had something. But we had Drew Bledsoe, we had John Freeze, and we had Michael Bishop on the roster. But we thought we had something in this kid, and we did not want to expose him to waivers and have the chance of somebody maybe claiming him and say, here's this guy, we'll keep him as our 3rd quarterback and try to develop him. We tried to develop him, and he took it to to a level, as we know. I mean, heck, he's 43. I mean, we're recording this. He's 43 years old today, and he's still playing. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, what was it like? Did you spend any time with him pre-draft, or when did you start to really get a chance to get to know him?
Well, the first time I saw him was actually his senior season. Syracuse had a home game against the University of Michigan. I was actually I had to go to Buffalo that weekend to do an advanced scout while I was working with the Jets. And I went to the Syracuse game that weekend, saw him play, met him through the draft process. And we spent some time on him and other quarterbacks because, again, we knew that we wanted to draft a young quarterback as we were going through this process. And so, we spent time. There were a group of us that, one of the things I think that people fail to realize, even about the Patriots organization, is they see the final decisions that are made, but the number of people that are involved, again, you talk about teamwork, you talk about diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, diversity of opinions. There was a very good group of people that were involved. And Dick Rabine, who was the quarterback's coach who had gone up to Michigan and worked Tommy out, spent time with him. Unfortunately, we lost Dick way too soon. In Tommy's second year during training camp, Dick had a heart attack and passed away. Charlie Weiss was involved, Ernie Adams, and obviously Bill and myself. and even part of the old staff that was there, Bobby Greer, who was the general manager at the time, or I forget what Bobby's title was at the time. There were a number of people that were involved. So everyone had a hand in bringing information to the table. And then at the end of the day, you're taking all those ideas and those thoughts, and then you make a decision. It's just like any other business.
Yeah, it's incredible. We're here with Scott Pioli on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, talking about his time with the New England Patriots, where they won 3 Super Bowls. Scott, I mean, there's something special that, maybe you can, if you're able to sort of put your finger on it. Was it the culture, around the Patriots, or was it I think there's really something interesting around this idea that there's, I think that what was it that sort of made the Patriots the Patriots, and being able to win all those Super Bowls and be able to bring together a group of men to achieve the kind of accomplishments that you did?
Yeah, Wayne, it's always more complicated than any one thing, right? And people always say, what's the silver bullet? What's the one thing? And it's always difficult to do that. It's also like, when you ask about, if someone asks, who was the most influential person in your life? And it's I don't think it's ever just one thing. Some of the things that we did is we went in there with all the intentions of building a team. We had this belief and thought that, individuals go to Pro Bowls, teams win championships. We wanted to win championships. So everything that we did in building the culture, which was at times extremely healthy, but in certain ways, no matter what, there's always, certain unhealthy things about a culture. And what we kept paramount was that everything that we were going to do on a daily basis was about winning games and the collective, and about the greater good of the team, not any one individual. It wasn't going to be about any one coach. It wasn't going to be about any one player. It wasn't going to be about anyone in the front office. It was always going to be about everything that we did was about winning games and trying to win the right way with the right kind of people. And we made that one of the things, and I have this conversation with people in different companies and corporations. Any organization, team, and unit has to have a mission. They have to have a value system. But the other thing you have to do as an HR director, which is what I felt like I was the hiring person, because I was, the person responsible with a team of scouts and personnel people to try to identify the talent that would fit our culture. And we knew who the leader was. I knew who the leader was. It was Bill. On Sundays, regardless of what a power structure or what a hierarchy is within an organization in football, whether the head coach is the boss and the general manager is number 2, or the general manager is number 1 and the head coach is number 2, it really doesn't matter. Because if you're the general manager or the vice president of player personnel, whatever you are, your job is to find players and to serve the head coach and his staff. Because at the end of the day, the performers, the players, need to listen to and react and respond to the head coach and the assistant coaches. So the job of building the culture also had to do with finding people and players that were willing to be a part of this culture, or at least willing to try to be a part of this culture, where they were going to have to give up their selfishness and become more selfless. So I think one of the important things was we all have egos, right? And we all have these elements where we do want to stand up, and we do. Yet the culture that we created, we all pushed one another's buttons to humble one another. And anyone who came into it, if you wanted to coexist, you had to think about the greater good. And what was amazing was the players and the people that we brought in that were willing to buy into that culture and that thought process, and to follow Bill and his leadership and his leadership style, they started to take over. And the thing about the success that we had, as great a leader as Bill is, and he's, again, one of the most amazing leaders I've ever been around, and his ability to focus on things, the trickle-down effect into our locker room, where we were a locker room-led organization. And again, let's flip it around. Let's talk about a business. When you are an organization or a company that has tremendous leadership, where it's a leadership group, right? Because it's never just one person. But then the trickle down effect is if your employees are the ones that are keeping the culture and maintaining the culture, again, I don't know what word to use. Some people have called it the vigilante mentality, but the vigilante mentality within the locker room, where our players held one another to a level of accountability unlike anything I've ever seen, and did not allow selfishness in our football team, was probably one of the greatest culture things that I saw happen. Because the players knew and believed that Bill and the entire coaching staff was going to do everything that they had to do to prepare them to be successful on Sunday. Everyone knew that the personnel department was going to do everything we had to do and work tirelessly to continue to find players to make our team better, to make our locker room culture better, to make it similar, but also to, when there was a problem, when there was an injury, when something happened, everyone knew that we were going to do what we had to do to have replacements in place. So there was this whole idea that everyone knew that we were all literally serving one another. It was truly about servant leadership. Bill was serving the players were serving, we were all serving one another.
Well, certainly, I mean, one of the big moves that you made was bringing in Randy Moss in 2007. And, you talk about that culture and that, at the time, right, it was like, why were the Patriots bringing in a guy like this, right? But my God, I mean, I think it really has not only was amazing for you as in the organization, but for him and his life and the trajectory that it took off. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's an interesting situation because people talk about the Randy Moss trade, they talk about the Corey Dillon trade in the same vein. They say, well, how could they do this? Why would they do this? Here's this player with this reputation, and we've seen what he does on TV. He doesn't fit the culture. He doesn't fit. And I think one of the very dangerous things that has happened in this world is that people's reputations precede them. And very often we've found in life that it's not always accurate and it's not always fair. And the way that we act and behave, every single one of us, when we're 21 years old versus 31 years old, or even a couple of years later, life's experiences shape all of us. And as we sat down with Randy and got to know Randy and spent time with him, including the morning that we made the trade, I love Randy Moss, and I really I'm struggling for words here because he had some again on-air behavior things that people did he behave a certain way? Yes. Did people over exaggerate and some of the things and he became this person that didn't necessarily fit, right? We all have this duality of personality. Every single one of us is better than the worst thing that we've done. Right? I truly believe that. Brian Stevenson said that in his book, Just Mercy. And I've thought about that. We all do bad things. We all do dumb things. We also do some good things. And for us to frame people as being any one thing, I think is really unfair. The trade of Randy Moss, there was this moment. We flew, I was negotiating with Mr. Davis late into the night, the night before we made the trade in the middle of the draft. And we came to agree to terms, and the terms were, okay, Randy's got to come here. He's got to pass a physical. Belichick and I have to talk to him. And then if we get it done, we'll make the trade. Well, we bring Randy in. He shows up early in the morning. Bill and I meet with him. We're talking to him. Bill stepped away for a second, and I looked at Randy, and I said, listen, Randy, I know we're talking about all this. Just so you know, I'm going to have to call your agent. The way your contract is right now, we're going to have to reduce it by, and I couldn't even finish my words, and I'll never forget. We're sitting there facing one another, and for the visual here, I'll leave you. He leans into me, goes, and he literally got tears in his eyes and says, P, I don't care how much you guys pay me. Get me out of there and get me here, please. And what that moment said to myself, and then Bill walked right after, and I explained to Bill what was going on, and we could see the genuine emotion that was going on. That was Randy Moss. That was Randy Moss to the core. Randy cared more about winning than he did about money and himself. He wanted to be a champion. He had gotten to a stage in his life and his career. Again, all of us act differently at different stages in our life. All of us have different elements on the outside that are important to us at different stages of life. I knew, Bill knew, we knew at that moment that Randy took, I want to say the pay cut was $6 million just to come and be a New England Patriot and to be a part of this program, to play for Bill, play with Tom Brady. And to me, it's in private moments that we find out who people really are. Again, sometimes these players it's a very emotional game that they play. It's also entertainment. They're encouraged to be entertainers and athletes and to be individuals. And sometimes in moments of emotion, it gets away from them. That doesn't necessarily define who the person is. And again, Wayne, I feel like it's that way in any business, right? There's times when people are negotiating and things are like this, and someone can say something really stupid, really offensive because of competition, because of ego, because of testosterone, because of insecurity. We all say and do things that we wish we could have had back. What you need to do is pay attention to someone's patterns of behavior to find out who they really are.
Great advice from Scott Pioli, our special guest on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. Scott, those are amazing stories while you were with the New England Patriots and just your incredible relationship with Bill Belichick and all the things that you did together, winning 3 Super Bowls, 5 times NFL Executive of the Year. But I think one of the things that I really want to touch on, and obviously after the Patriots, you spent time as the general manager of the Chiefs and the Falcons. But I think right now, when we think about what's going on in 2020 today, you are one of those leaders. You are one of those people that's truly an advocate and an ally for equality, for social justice, for social responsibility. And I think, if everyone is sort of tuned in and listen to all your words very carefully of what you talked about from a football perspective, they'll really understand why you care and why you believe that you can actually make incredible change. And you certainly have not only just talked about it, you put money where your mouth is across all these issues and become an outspoken advocate for equality and making sure that people are going to go out there and vote. And I'd love to hear your thoughts, your perspective, and your advice for all of us today to hopefully try to make this world a better place, because that's what we're all about at 76 Capital.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if I'm in a position to give advice and recommend to people what to do, because everyone has to do what they feel they can do and what's best for them within their framework of their own, their own life and their own values. I know this, part of what you were asking is the why, and I was blessed to. A couple of things. The work that I do in the space of racial equality, gender equality, and equity, and the work is because I've had the blessing of being proximate. In terms of gender, I learned at a very young age. I had 2 sisters, or I have 2 sisters, thankfully still, that were better than me in every single way growing up. They were better students, they were better athletes, they were better behaved, they were less knuckleheads. They weren't as funny, but they were certainly better than me in every way. And the short version is that because I look like I do, and because I have an extra piece of the anatomy, I always had more opportunities than my sisters. And yet they were better than me in every single way. And I've just known throughout my life that there's just something very fundamentally wrong about that. And there's much more to that, but I do want to answer the why. And that's where that stems from, is, again, watching people that I love and respect not even getting opportunities, and then watching them being marginalized their entire lives because I look like I do and they look like they do. Then the other part, from a racial standpoint, I was in the third grade, and my teacher, Miss Cooper, who I referenced earlier, was the first black school teacher in Washingtonville Central School District. We were a central school district, 7 villages, towns, and she was the first black school teacher, and that was in 1972, I want to say. And I watched this woman who was not only brilliant, she was caring, she was generous, she was kind, she was thoughtful, brilliant, working in a community that was against her, that didn't believe that someone that looked like her should be teaching kids that looked like me. And I watched this woman, who's one of my dearest friends to this day, goes by Mrs. Jackson now, but I still call her Miss Cooper. Watched her come to school every day and teach kids. Every single day, she had a hug, a touch. She had genuine love for kids that she was trying to teach that belonged to families that didn't necessarily respect her and were pretty vocal about it, quite honestly, and a lot of people in the community. And to watch that and find out and realize at 7 or 8 years old how wrong adults can be, people that are adults that you love and respect, that they have this path of thought that is just not right, it's not accurate. Those things impacted me. Again, there's much more to that, though that's the short version. So I have just felt this obligation of trying to do what's right. And again, I want to be clear, I haven't always done what's right? I have been the knucklehead who's engaged in, dumb jokes or laughed at dumb jokes. However, I've made sure that I've done the work, that I have educated myself, that I have continually my entire life made myself not only get educated through books and reading and articles, but get educated through proximity by putting myself in places and communities that I wouldn't normally be in, because unless you see and hear, right? One of the brilliant things my dad told me as a kid, listen, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in the proper proportion. And part of being proximate to people is being able to see and listen and then feel what's going on. Those things, that's part of the why, Wayne. And it's just something that I feel a personal obligation to make a part of my life. I have been incredibly blessed to have this platform. And, you don't, the way I was raised is you don't, to whom much is given, much, much more will be required. And I have been very blessed to be given things, all of these things. It's not mine, Wayne. I am here to be a steward of things to help other people. And anyway, there's much more to talk about that. Maybe we'll do a second show and we'll spend all of our time on that. And we'll talk more about that. But Wayne, one thing I do want to back up to, I want to stay in this moment of talking about equality and philanthropy, but I do want to, you said some incredibly wonderful things, which I genuinely appreciate. And there's this other truth in my life too, which was the epic failure in Kansas City. And people love to talk about the trophies, and you mentioned the Executive of the Year awards. Those things are wonderful. Those things are fine. But I truly believe that the failure that I had in Kansas City was just as important for many, many reasons. Unfortunately, with failure, you hurt people unintentionally. Other people's lives suffer because not only was I fired, but a number of people around me were fired. But the education that happened in Kansas City by failing, even though I was working just as hard, if not harder, than I did in New England, and made some good decisions in Kansas City, I also made some bad decisions. I also made some bad decisions in New England, but those things get covered up when you win those trophies and those rings. So I think an important part of this story also is failure, and not. So I genuinely appreciate us talking about all the wonderful and good things I did. And you know what? I failed epically too, and that's a really important part of the life story and business and striving to have success.
Well, there's no doubt in every great story, there's ups and downs, and being an entrepreneur, business person, athlete, It's all about that. And it's one of the things that I think is really fascinating when we think about things at 76 Capital. And it's all about this idea of the things that you need to be successful in business are very similar to the types of things that you need to be successful within the sports world. You have to have the passion, the desire, the drive. And the most important thing is the persistence. I mean, it's being able to get knocked down and get back up and do amazing things in your life. And that's the one thing that, hopefully, these kinds of stories, the things that we all learn about just getting knocked down, but just, you got to get back up. You got to get back up. We got to make this, try to make your life better. And most importantly today, I think one of the big things is trying to make this world a better place right now. And I think one of your efforts right now to remind people to go out and vote and have their voice heard is an extremely important thing, especially as we're going through such tough times in our country with, such upheaval with social justice, with this terrible COVID-19 situation that we're going through right now with, in my opinion, and I'll speak from my perspective, with no leadership, unfortunately, no leadership from the top. And that's where, I think that, you and coaches like Bill Belichick and others are real leaders, have really moved people forward. And if we were in a situation right now where we truly did have a leader at the top that was really pushing things forward, we will get through this, but it potentially can happen faster. And that's something that I think is really important. And I love the fact that you are, you're doing what you're doing, you're helping others. And that's why we're just thrilled to have you as one of our guests on our leadership series, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And I want to be clear about this too, and I appreciate you bringing this up. I want to be clear about this, my belief and work in the voting space and trying to eliminate voter suppression and make it available to the people that should be having it. I am nonpartisan. I am neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm a humanitarian that cares about people and people's rights. And this work that I'm doing about the vote has everything to do with equality. There are segments of this population and communities that are being ignored and haven't had voices for years. 55 years ago, we passed a law in the year that I was born on voting. And over the last 55 years, we've watched it disappear and dissipate. And again, to me, my push for this, it's been amazing because I've reached out and it's going to be interesting. The state of Pennsylvania, I'm not gonna blow any information here, but I've been dealing. I had the blessing to speak with the National Association of Secretaries of States about voting and helping and offer myself to vote. And there's been some incredible people that have reached out to me, secretaries of states on both sides of the aisle, who just want to do their job. And their job is to get people out to vote, regardless of who the people are, where they live, what color they are, what their faith is. And the state of Pennsylvania, it's interesting. I've had the opportunity to speak with the Secretary of State and also the Chief of Staff, Sari Stevens, and the leadership that I'm seeing from important sports people like James Franklin, Mike Tomlin, some folks at the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, I don't want to blow what's going to be happening here, but those people are stepping up because they're doing it for the same reason. And everyone is saying the same thing. Listen, this isn't about being on either side of the aisle. This is about equality. This is about trying to give people this right that we're supposed to have as Americans. And that's where it stems for me. It's about being able to give people what they should have. And again, this is just one of the many fights that's part of the evil of racism.
No doubt. And I think, you touched on this a little bit. You talked about coaches, but what about from an athlete perspective? I mean, one of the things that we also talk about in our 76 Capital Leadership Series is the responsibility or the platform or the social capital that athletes now have to try to help make this world a better place. So what are your thoughts around, is it a responsibility or is it just each person their own thing? Like, how do you think that, you think, if you had to be, if you right now, you were advising athletes or some of your players on teams, and having, whether it's wearing a certain, like vote on their jersey, right. Or racial equality or, Black Lives Matter, things like that. How do you feel about all that and how they can actually really move this message forward?
Yeah, it's complex when you tell you the truth, because again, my belief is and I mentioned this earlier, to whom much is given, much more will be required. I believe in that sincerely. That's how I believe. I think that's how a lot of people feel. But individuals, I don't know if it's a responsibility or an obligation, but who am I to say what Wayne Kimmel's responsibility or obligation is? I don't know your life. I don't know the circumstances you're in. I don't know where things are at in your life right now. I don't know what things have affected you or haven't affected you. I would love for people to consider it being an obligation, consider it being something that they should do. But again, we live in a country where I don't have the right to be telling people what they should do. I would hope that they do. It's what I choose to do. Do I like it when I see athletes, coaches, and people, use their platform, use their brand, again, I'm on this thing. I'm here today, Wayne, because I got 3 of these trophies, right? What do I know more than you or other people in your industries? But we get this platform. I don't believe in just dribble the ball either. I think if you have a voice and you want to use it, if you have a platform and you want to use it, you should. And you've got not only the opportunity, but you've got the right to do it. And people who suppress people who have that platform is where I have a bigger problem with the people who are trying to suppress some kind of truth. I also, again, and on the other side, I also understand that some people, for whatever reason, they don't want to make themselves targets. They don't want to make themselves, and you don't have to be speaking publicly in order to be helping. There's a lot of people that don't speak publicly, but they do things within their own communities. We don't know what people do when we don't see them in the public. I know a lot of people who don't speak publicly about the things that they do, but they're doing the work. They're doing it in places and spaces and opportunities that they feel most comfortable.
Another really big thing that you've done, Scott, publicly has been, your, just advocacy and being able to move this, this idea of actually having females as coaches in the NFL, which was, pretty controversial. And at the same time, you've done a heck of a job. I mean, when Katie Sowers, is an offensive coach, for the 49ers in the Super Bowl, and she gives you a shout out. How does that make you feel for being able to do the things that you've done there?
Yeah, it feels good because again, it's giving me an opportunity to fulfill the promise that I made surrounding my sisters. Right, Katie was our daughter's 5th grade basketball coach in Kansas City, and that's how I got to know Katie. And eventually, she became an intern. A part-time intern, and then became a full-time intern for me in the personnel department at the Atlanta Falcons, not for me, for us at the Atlanta Falcons. And it feels really cool because the reality is coaches are teachers, and anyone can be a teacher, right? And the fact that we take segments of the populations and tell people that they can't do this, and you ask why, and they say, well, they never played the game. Well, you know what? I've been in the NFL for 25 plus years. I was in college football for 4 years before that. I know a ton of people that are general managers, head coaches, assistant coaches, every area of football operations who never took a snap in their lives. And they're men. So to put something on someone and say that they can't do it because they never worked in that space is untrue and unfair. It's a convenient excuse to create a barrier for people that just is, again, one more way to marginalize people. It's cool to see it because all Katie needed was an opportunity and then mentorship and then teaching, right? We cannot provide opportunities and then just tell people, okay, you're in the door, good luck, have at it. You have to bring people in and, again, give them an opportunity, but mentor them. Make yourself proxy, right? Just because someone is a different gender doesn't mean that you can't, one of the things I saw happen early on with Katie and other people that I've brought into the league is this idea that they give people an opportunity, but the people who are intern coaches or intern scouts, the guys come over to the person's family's house for dinner, but for whatever reason, they don't invite the woman or they don't invite the black person, right? Because we force ourselves to be within communities that we're comfortable with. And that sometimes doesn't allow people to grow beyond the opportunity that they've been given.
Well, you've certainly put your money where your mouth is, but you put yourself out there for all of these causes. You've truly been an advocate and an ally for so many people. And I just, congratulate you for that so far. I cannot wait to see all the things that you're going to do moving forward. We're really excited for you to watch you on the NFL Network as well as CBS this year. That'll be really, really fun to see. And, just keep doing all the great work that you're doing in the world and trying to make this world a better place for all of us. And, you're leading. And that's why we really wanted to have you as a guest on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. So Scott, thank you so much for your time. I think we could sit here all day and talk about this. I love your stories. I feel that there's so many more things we could talk about, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do that another time. But I know we're both gotta go. But again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Wayne. And I appreciate what you're doing, because you're leading as well. You doing this series, again, not with me, but with all these other people that I've watched you've had on that have touched on so many different parts of life. Thank you for the leading that you're doing and for giving the opportunity for people to speak and to listen. Thank you, Wayne.
Well, you're welcome, and let's and thank you again, and let's all follow Scott at Scott Pioli 51 on Twitter. Watch him on the NFL Network this year, as well as CBS. It's really been amazing having a 26-year NFL executive, a 3-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time NFL Executive of the Year on our show. And again, most importantly, someone who's really and truly an advocate and ally for equality, social justice, and social responsibility around not only the NFL, but the world in general. So again, thank you so much, Scott. And you can watch all of our 76 Capital episodes on our YouTube channel. You subscribe to that. You can check it out. Also, check us out across all of our social networks, whether that's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find out about all the things that are going on with 76 Capital across those social networks, as well as on YouTube, as we said. So subscribe there for our shows. Again, Scott, thanks so much for joining us on our show, and we'll look forward to watching you and seeing all the great things that you're doing during this season.
Thank you, Wayne.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.